let's remember Mike Greenwell a day after his passing, because, man, this dude was a player. And from the moment like the news came out, obviously you got all these stories about Mike Greenwell, how great a guy he was, both with the Red Sox as a teammate and his home state of Florida, where he served as a councilman. And like those tributes kept rolling in. Teammates, media members, like people who covered him, everyone had nothing but nice things to say about Mike Greenwell. So clearly he was a great guy. But I didn't know Mike Greenwell personally, so I'm not going to try to one-up anybody, Zach. I'll let those people talk about Mike Greenwell that actually knew him like as the person. But as a player, like this dude had a career, man. Okay, spent his whole 12-year career with the Red Sox. And how about this for pressure when you get drafted, Zach? He plays left field, okay?
Mm-hmm.
He comes up in 1985. And at that point, left field with the Boston Red Sox for a couple of generations meant you were a Hall of Famer.
Mm-hmm.
It literally goes from 1940 till Mike Greenwell comes up in 1985. It goes Ted Williams to Carl Yastrzemski to Jim Rice with no overlap, like straight through 45 years of Hall of Famers playing at that position. Like that, think about that kind of pressure, first off. Like guys crumble under that kind of stuff. Like legit. Anyway, he comes up.
No, I completely agree with you. Like I'm trying to think as I'm listening through, I'm trying to think of another position. And I'm sure there are, if you thought about that, but of where it's like
whoever's going to come next for the Packers quarterback. Right?
Yeah.
Like, go from Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers to Jordan Love, who seems to be a stud himself, like all in a row.
Yeah, but usually I feel like for the most part, it's one person. It's just like, oh, I got a feeling for this guy.
Yeah, that's tough
like,
enough.
Yeah. And it's like, oh, the guy who, I took over for Steve. I don't remember who I took over Steve Young in San Francisco. All these things. If it's just one guy, it's enough. But the fact, as you mentioned, it's 45 years of that position's been on lock. There hasn't been an off season, but just for like a mid year, So yeah,
not one. So he comes up, and by age 24, he's a stud in the league. In 1988, I want to give you his 1988 season here, Zach. And this is, again, when batting average is still basically king, right? So in 88, he hits 325 with a 946 OPS, hitting 22 homers, drives in 119 runs for a 170 OPS plus. Granted, a number they didn't have back then, and a 7.5 WAR. And he doesn't win the MVP. Okay, let's go even further into this, because here's why he should have, because he was the most valuable player to his team.
Okay.
Here's where it gets even crazier. So the Red Sox, this is 2 years after they went to the World Series in 86 with John McNamara. And at the All-Star break in 88, they're one game over 500. They're in fourth place in the AL East, and they fire John McNamara, the guy who just got them to the World Series 2 years earlier. And then after the break, they go on this tear with Joe Morgan, not that Joe Morgan, as their manager. They win 12 games in a row, and then 20 out of 21 out of the All-Star break. Morgan Magic. They go from one game over 500 to 19 games over 500 and go from fourth place to first place in the AL East, erase a 9-game lead, all in 3 weeks.
That's very impressive.
In 3 weeks. And Mike Greenwell is leading the way. And he somehow doesn't win the MVP.
Do you have his voting? Like, what did he get votes?
He finished in second. The only thing that kept him off the MVP was the first ever 40-40 season. Jose Canseco goes 40-40. And by the way, you look at the stats, like they're actually pretty much stat for stat. I know this wasn't a stat they had back then, and I know it gets a little overblown these days, but Mike Greenwell, in a season where Jose Canseco had a 40-40 year, Mike Greenwell had a better WAR that year.
Impressive.
That's nuts, man. That's crazy. Did not cheat. He didn't cheat. And like, you can't rewrite history, but that is definitely something you look back on, right? And think this would have been a crowning achievement for this guy's career. And it's taken away by someone who's juicing up and juicing up the rest of the league himself. Here's the two stories that really, to me, solidify Mike Greenwell as a legend. even more so than Morgan's magic and what he did in that 88 season. Because in his last full month as a professional baseball player in September of 1996, he has this game at the Kingdome where he drives in all 9 runs for the Red Sox in a 9-8, 10-inning victory. So he carries them all night and has the game-winning hit in extra innings. And he sets the major record. Nobody has ever driven in more runs that accounted for all the team's runs in one game. Like, that is one of the great, I know it's one meaningless game in September, but that's like an unbelievable backpacking performance, man. All 9 runs. And that's, again, his last month of his career. Like, he's done at that point. And here's the best one, because I've buried the lead here. Mike Greenwell was known as Gator throughout his whole career, throughout his whole life. He's a Florida guy. And one year in spring training, he earned his nickname because this dude, mind you, Jose Canseco, the one who beat him out in the AL MVP race in 88, Jose Canseco is the one that takes the steroids. But one year in spring training, Mike Greenwell literally wrestled a gator by himself and put it in Ellis Burks' locker. And so that's like, is there a more badass thing than that? He's literally hunting gators. He's wrestling them and putting them in his teammates' locker. Like, this dude is a freaking legend, man. An absolute legend. And I say he doesn't get his due because he's not really remembered as much now, but he is in the Red Sox Hall of Fame. And we actually had this discussion on a few segments, right? Of like, that's a patented classic team Hall of Fame guy. 12 years of his career, whole career with one team, has a season for the books. And the mid-'80s, it's still, like, his age 22 through 28 seasons are still pretty good. You know, it's that one that he finishes number 2 in the MVP voting. But he was an all-star a couple of times. He finished top 5 in Rookie of the Year in 87, which was really his first full season.
We used to have a segment that we would do, obviously, called Guys Naming Dudes. Did we ever have... that's what I was saying. Did we ever cover Greenwell? Because Greenwell obviously fits in that category. He's a little before
both our times, though. That's the problem. Yeah, he's just a little before both our times. So, like, really sad, man. Pretty young, 62. He raced cars too. He was in NASCAR races, like legit. He was in like 1 or 2 legit NASCAR races. He was a local politician in Florida in his hometown. Always stayed active with the Red Sox. So sucks, man. It sucks. But I needed to take a moment. It was the biggest sports story of the day yesterday in Boston to take a minute to appreciate Mike Greenwell. How about that for a career, Zach?
No,
that's a pretty good career to tell your grandkids about. I hope he got to.
Oh, for sure.
Like,
for sure.
That is fantastic stuff. Wow. R.I.P. Mike Greenwell, an absolute legend.